Hey guys, today I'll show you a historical epic action film, The Great Battle. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. Imagine being surrounded by a massive invading army. A group of people known to everyone as traitors are the only ones standing by your side against the enemy. They are also small in scale compared to the enemy. What should one do? This question is answered by the film The Great Battle. It is a war action film that details the iconic siege of Ansi Fortress. This decisive battle is a great win for the kingdom of Goguryeo against the invading Tang dynasty, even though the people of Ansi Fortress are massively outnumbered by the imposing size of the Tang army. Aside from the usual adrenaline boost that one gets when watching an action film like this, the film also manages to masterfully blend the battle scenes with emotional moments, which culminates in the feeling of pride as the film's conclusion comes in. Overall, the film exemplifies the value of not giving up against odds greater than the self. The film opens on a battle between the invading forces of the Tang dynasty and the defending forces of the Goguryeo kingdom. In this battle, the Goguryeo army charges against the Tang army in an open field, but the Tang army shortly dismantle them in a surprise rear attack. As the Goguryeo army is beginning to wane, they signal a retreat. During this retreat, one soldier, Samol, witnesses the death of his fellow soldier, Nulham. The battle ends with the loss of Goguryeo. Samol carries his friend's dead body, believing that he is still alive, but it is too late. That night, it is revealed that the Tang forces captured a lady spirit medium from Goguryeo. The Tang emperor learns that Goguryeo has only one last place to conquer before reaching the capital, Ansi Fortress. He also learns that the lady they captured is once engaged to Yang, the commander of Ansi Fortress. With this information, the Tang emperor becomes ecstatic, noting that nothing could stop them from capturing the capital. Meanwhile, a general asks Samol about his knowledge about Yang. After Samol tells him that he knows Yang from when he was a child at Ansi Fortress, the general then tells him that Yang is disloyal to Goguryeo, ordering Samol to penetrate Ansi Fortress and assassinate Yang. Samol hesitates because he learns that the Tang army is heading toward Ansi Fortress, but the general insists. Samol eventually accepts. And so, Samol heads to Ansi Fortress alone. During his travel toward the fortress, he meets two fellow Goguryeo soldiers who want to accompany him to Ansi Fortress. Eventually, while approaching Ansi Fortress, the three stumble upon a man having trouble with his cart. The man asks for their help in taking the cart off the mud, and the three agree to help him. After helping him, Samol asks the man if he's from Ansi Fortress and if he can accompany him to the commander. A simple-clothed man reveals himself to be the commander, introducing himself as Yang. The commander orders his soldier to inspect the three's horses, and the man finds that their extra ration is nowhere to be found, which means that they must be Tang spies pretending to be Goguryeo soldiers. The two soldiers who accompanied Samol suddenly take their swords out to fight, but Yang's man dispatches them with haste, leaving Samol the only one alive. While Samol proves that he is indeed a Goguryeo soldier, the man still thinks that something is fishy with him, but Yang decides to spare Samol. Yang orders his soldier to take Samol to Ansi Fortress. They then head to the Ansi Fortress. Inside Ansi Fortress, Yang orders for Samol's imprisonment. Afterward, a fight between Yang's lieutenants breaks out. After getting there, Yang learns that the fight started over food and orders his lieutenants to stop their fight. That night, Yang interviews Samol about his reason for returning to Traitor's Fortress, pointing an arrow towards him. Samol lies to Yang, telling him that he returned after learning of the approaching Tang's forces. Shortly after, Samol's master arrives at the room to happily greet him for his return. Afterward, Yang introduces his men to Samol. The man accompanying Yang earlier is Chu, while the two lieutenants fighting earlier are Pu and Huelbo. Yang then orders Samol to be his flag bearer in battle. That same night, Samol tries to proceed with his assassination by following Yang to a small shack. However, he stops his plan when he sees that Yang is actually visiting a couple who has just got a newborn child. The following day, Samol witnesses Yang leading his men in opening the gate. Afterward, Yang asks the whereabouts of one of his men, Paso. He then rushes to Paso's house and spots Paso with a female soldier named Bekha. He then tries to kill the soldier, but an alarm sounds off. There, the soldiers spot a recon unit from the Tang, and Yang orders his men to prepare for the arrival of the Tang emperor. While preparing for the battle, Yang orders Samol to trim his beard using his dagger. Samol nervously cuts the commander's beard, seeing this as an opportunity to kill him. But before Samol can go further, Yang tells him that the time is not now. Shu enters the room and murmurs at the commander, telling him that the boy is definitely sent to kill him. But Yang places his trust on Samol, telling Chu that the boy is still an Ansi man. They then head to the walls. There, they see the intimidating display of Tang soldiers, complete with trebuchets, ladders, and a battering ram. The Emperor is also with them. Yang decides to rile up his men to protect Ansi, and the Emperor does the same to his men. Shortly after, the battle commences with a rain of huge rocks from the Tang army. After this attack, the Tang Emperor orders his men to climb the walls of the fortress. At first, the Goguryeo army manages to slow their enemies' advance, but Tang soldiers soon manage to climb their walls. Yang's lieutenants fight the Tang soldiers with an excellent showcase of skills. After the Tang Emperor orders to attack the left and right flank, Yang orders Bekha's and Paso's troops to attack these enemies. Eventually, the enemy has breached the gate, but this is actually a trap set by Yang. The commander then orders his men to form a close formation and push the enemies off the walls. He then orders his men to bring down the ladders by using ballistae. After seeing the ladders fall, the Tang Emperor orders their retreat for now. As a result, Goguryeo is victorious. That night, Samol asks Yang why he spared him despite knowing he's a spy, and Yang answers that there is no point to it, because they will just send another assassin. Afterward, the Ansi people celebrate their victory. The following night, Samol appears in front of the commander to threaten him with his dagger. Samol asks questions toward the commander, asking him why he has not sent reinforcements during their earlier battle. Yang replies that sending reinforcement would still yield the same result. Then Samol asks Yang to obey the general, but the commander refuses. That same night, the Tang forces launch an attack. Shuv is about to kill Samol for threatening the commander, but Yang stops him, saying that the enemy is their priority. The Tang army brought siege towers which they used to fire flaming arrows at the enemy at close range. It also acts as a ladder for their men below. The Tang Emperor proudly tells the medium that Ansi will fall. Meanwhile, Yang surveys the scene. He then orders his men to gather oil pouches before entering in the battle himself. Samol also participates in the fight. After the oil pouches have been prepared, Yang orders his men to throw it to the siege towers while he fires at it with a flaming arrow. One by one, the siege towers burn, and the Tang Emperor is dumbfounded by the sight. However, a flying spear from a Tang soldier hits Yang in his right shoulder. The soldier is about to kill him, but this is prevented by Samol. The commander then loses consciousness. After 4 days, Yang wakes up surrounded by his lieutenants and people. Shu tells him that he could have died if it wasn't for Samol saving him. That night, the townspeople celebrate the victory. At the Tang's headquarters, the Tang Emperor angrily asks his men why they cannot even conquer a tiny fortress. He then comes up with an idea, that is to send the captured medium to the fortress. The medium refuses at first, but she accepts eventually, carrying with her Goguryeo's holy relic, an arrow from the god king Jumon. Yang asks the medium how she got there, and she responds by saying that the Tang Emperor had sent her there. She then tells him that the Tang Emperor is planning to build a tall dirt mound that will be hard to defend against. Sure enough, the next day, the Tang army start constructing it in front of Ansi. That night, the medium tells Yang that the Tang Emperor has made her see Ansi's future fall, imploring the commander to surrender. However, the stubborn Yang refuses her offer. The dirt mound is progressively being built, with a soldier informing the Tang Emperor that it will be finished within 2 months. Overlooking the gradually rising dirt mound, Samol suggests that they should call reinforcements from the capital. The men understandably refuse because they are branded as traitors there. However, Paso offers another option, and that is to assassinate the Tang Emperor via quick attack from Paso's cavalry. That night, Bekha tearfully enters Commander Yang's room to admonish him for accepting the plan. Yang replies that there is no other way. Later, Bekha approaches an already preparing Paso, asking him why he's leaving without saying goodbye, and Paso promises that he will come back for her. That same night, the cavalry quietly launches their attack, only to find out that the enemy had surrounded them. Paso immediately concludes that there must be a spy at the Ansi fortress. After a while, Paso returns, but he is covered in arrows. The dying Paso tells Yang that it was a trap, that there is a spy, and to tell Bekha not to wait for him. Bekha enters the scene, but Paso is already dead. She mournfully asks the medium to ask Paso's soul to return. The medium then tells her she cannot do that, because she is the reason for his death. The medium explains that she alerted the Tang army of the plan through a message attached in an arrow. The men are seething with rage. As Yang is about to strike her for what she had done, Samol immediately cuts her throat, telling them that Ansi will not fall. The following day, Yang is informed that Bekha fights against the enemy alone. Beckam manages to shoot an arrow against the emperor, with the arrow grazing the emperor's cheek before she is finally killed. Impressed by her bravery, the emperor allows her body to be returned to Ansi. Yang mourns for her. Instead of burying the lovers, Yang orders their coffin to be pushed down the river so that the lovers could meet again at sea. Tired of the deaths he has seen, Salmo leaves and swiftly heads to the capital. On his way there, he encounters Tang's soldiers who pursued him, but he successfully manages to evade them as he reaches the capital. There, he requests backup. The general refuses his wish, even threatening to kill him for defying him. But Salmo is persistent, shouting at the general that the Ansi people are people of Goguryeo. Meanwhile, back at Ansi, Yang has a bright idea, and that is to topple a mound by digging below it. And so, the miners of Ansi get to work. After successfully building the mound, the Tang Emperor orders a feast for his men as preparation for tomorrow's attack. That night, it rains. Because the columns are wet from last night's rain, the miners have no choice but to chop the columns down in order to topple the mound, sacrificing their lives for Ansi. The mound falls before the enemy could ever cross over. Yang orders his men to quickly occupy the rest of the mound, emerging victorious in front of the emperor. The Tang Emperor is furious, immediately killing the lieutenant that was supposed to guard the mound on the night of the feast. Because of this embarrassing loss, the emperor orders to retrieve the mound at all costs. The people of Ansi proceed to defend the mound. The battle rages continuously through days and nights. After they have run out of arrows, Yang orders one of his men to retrieve the holy relic from his house. After getting it, the men decide to face the enemy head-on, while Yang aims the holy relic towards the emperor. Yang manages to fire it, hitting the emperor in his left eye. Shortly after, the reinforcement from the capital triumphantly arrives, and the emperor has no choice but to regretfully order a retreat, signaling the end of the war. During the rebuilding of Ansi, Salmo thanks Yang for successfully protecting Goguryeo, but Yang tells him that they did it together. The movie ends with Salmo leaving Ansi to continue his training in the capital. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your fun for today.